Hey guys.
Welcome everybody to the Fox Den. Mama D is back.
Yes, I am. Yes,
Fun
I'm
show.
so kicking myself because I missed the show. I was like, wow, it'll teach me to make sure that my bosses know I have to have Thursday nights off.
Amen. Amen.
Otherwise,
But
I'm
tonight's
sleeping.
going to be a little different show than what we're used to. This was a topic that's always intrigued me, and it is the Native American, Native Mississippian Mound people, the culture. You know, all those mounds in the they're all over the place. They follow the Mississippi River all the way up and down the entire freaking continent, basically. Hi, Carmen. And it's just like, it's always fascinating me as to, who built these and why did they build these and why is this and why is that? And also there's one that's at Moundsville State Prison across from the prison. And that was the first mound that I actually climbed on and saw. So, so the paranormal. Okay, but I'm going to play his bio video, get him on here, because we are only going to have him for an hour. Okay, so we had a lot to ask him, a lot to talk about in this hour.
This week in the Fox Den with Gina B and Mama D, we welcome P.D.Newman. P.D. is the author of our featured book, Tripping the Trail of Ghosts, Psychedelics, and the Afterlife Journey in Native American Mound Cultures. P.D.Newman has been immersed in the study and practice of shamanism, alchemy, hermetism, and theurgy for more than 2 decades. The author of Theurgy, Theory and Practice, The Mysteries of the Ascent to the Divine, Angels in Vermilion, The Philosopher's Stone from D to DMT, and Alchemically Stoned, The Psychedelic Secret of Freemasonry. The use of hallucinogenic substances like peyote and desert tobacco has long played a significant role in spiritual practices and traditions of Native Americans. While the majority of those practices are well documented, the relationship between entheogens and Native Americans of the Southeast, whose psychedelic use was just as sophisticated, has gone largely unexplored. Examining the role of psychoactive plants in afterlife traditions, sacred rituals, and spirit journeying by shamans of the Mississippian Mound Cultures, P.D.Newman explores the depth of the Native American death journey known as the Trail of Ghosts or Path of Souls. He demonstrates how practices such as fasting and trancework, alongside psychedelic plants like Jimson weed, black nightshade, morning glory, among others, were used to evoke the liminal state between life and death in initiatory rites and spirit journeys for shamans and chiefs. He explores the earthwork and platform mounds built by indigenous cultures of the Mississippi Valley, showing how they quite likely served as early models for the Path of Souls. He also explores similarities between the Ghost Trail Afterlife Journey and the well-known Egyptian and Tibetan books of the dead. And we welcome you, P.D.Newman, and everyone to the Fox Den.
Well, hello there, and welcome to the Fox Den. Thank you for taking some time with us.
Thank you for having me. Nice to meet
Love
you.
the video, G.
Well, thank you.
Yeah, great job.
Thank you very much. I did a lot of pictures. I did a lot of things. Our background, actually, even behind us, is that mound. It is Monk's Mound is behind us. I should make our little picture smaller so you can actually see it. But let's start there. Okay, so paying attention to the video, now we see where the mounds were. This culture was massive. I mean, it was massive. So basically, who were the Mississippians?
Well, the Mississippians are temporally they're the Native American, and it's a group of tribes. So I don't want to give the idea that it's just one group. It's a number of cultures clustered together, but they followed the Hopewell and Adena cultures, and they emerged. There's some disagreement between scholars in and around 1000 AD, with some indications that they may have been a couple of centuries earlier.
You know what's funny to me? It's like when I was researching myself, because I don't know about this subject. Yeah, I'm really very curious about it. But as I'm researching it, and I'm wondering where this community of people were, I way advanced. I mean, I think they
Oh
were
yeah.
way advanced, right? How did it go from this advanced culture to like the Native American Indians that we see today? You know, like that were depicted in the movies and everything. I know that was all wrong, but I mean, living in teepees as opposed to building these incredible mounds that was just so for religious, not even. Oh my God, I'm going way ahead of myself here. So please excuse me because
Can't stop.
5,000 things I want to ask you. Like these mounds that they built, I mean, they weren't slaves. Like the Egyptian had slaves to build the pyramids. These people did this. Sack at a time. And these mounds are so massive. I mean, football fields long, right? I mean, they are
Enormous.
so
As big as the Great Pyramid, as big as Teotihuacan in Central America. They are absolutely enormous, and it's hard to wrap your head around that, because the other pyramids that are more well known are stone monuments, and these aren't stone monuments. People get it in their heads that we're talking about hills, but they can look a number of different ways. The most common around here is what's called a platform mound, and they are pyramidal in shape with a flat top, like a trapezoid. And it's, if we were to go out and say, we're going to build a mound, it wouldn't work. There's a science to it that has been lost largely.
right. Well, I think the
If you were
material.
to pile up soil, it would erode, it would wash away. But they have stacked it in such a way that it stays. It reflects the natural stacking of different sediment layers in the earth. So they're building on the earth, and
so like,
the earth itself.
yeah. And then what's in it? So like there are three different kinds of mounds. You have the round mounds that are more buried, right? You have the flat that are more for building and the buildings that are on them. And the chieftain, like Monk's Mound, is like just massive. And they built even big walls around these things. And how they did that was digging trenches, sticking in the poles, the wooden.
And they can be all different shapes too. Like there's a site here that's my favorite site in Mississippi called Owl's Creek Mound. And it has one large flat top platform mound, but next to it is a crescent shaped mound, like a crescent moon. And I've never seen that anywhere else. I've been all over looking at these structures.
Did you go to the snake one?
The snake one I haven't visited. That's in Ohio, and it's left over from the Hopewell. So it wouldn't be a Mississippian mound.
Yeah,
but being said, a number of the Mississippian mounds aren't technically Mississippian, because they didn't just build them, they also inherited them from the Hopewell. And when they inherited them, they would maintain them, and oftentimes they would embellish them and build new structures. For example, when Sudatoria came into play, which are sweat lodges, when sweat lodges emerged, they were built on what I call in a sidecar form. So they would put this flat top but round tower-like mound on it, and then on top of that would go the sweat lodge. So they would inherit them also and make them their own.
It's just it's mind-boggling, and how big these areas were, and how much I mean, because it's like they didn't have the boundaries that we have. They didn't care like what's United States, what's there was no boundaries. It was they were just following the water, because water was like the key main.
Right. And there was a big climate change around that time too, which saw many people in Central America perished from this climate change. It became kind of a drought in the South that forced a lot of them north. So one of the places that we did inherit some culture from in the Mississippians was from Central America. And we see a lot of similarity between what they were doing and what the Mayans and the Aztecs, for instance, were doing. But we also see a lot of things that are brand new, and you know, they're what they had access to is different also. So when we talk about psychedelics and the use of psychedelic plants, many of the plants that they were using in Central and South America, many of them they had, but many of them they didn't. And the ones that they are unique to them are incredibly sophisticated as anything we see coming out of the Amazon, you know.
They compounded these things too. So it's
right.
You know, so there was trade, there was active trade, commerce. I mean, they had, you know,
the trade routes were very sophisticated. When we look at now this is a case of the southwestern natives, but they had Chaco Canyon, and Chaco Canyon, the way it's constructed is according to this very large lunar calendar scheme, which is an 18.6 year cycle. That same cycle is what played into many of the southeastern mound sites, how they constructed them. But at Chaco Canyon, they found a room full of these vessels that it was just by chance that one of the archaeologists recognized them and thought, wow, those look very similar to the vessels that I saw in South America that they were using to drink cacao. Now, cacao doesn't grow anywhere around there naturally. I don't even know if it would do well if you tried to plant it and cultivate it in that area, but they were certainly getting it because when they tested those vessels, they tested positive for cocoa. So the trade routes were sophisticated enough to get cocoa all the way from South America up into Chaco Canyon.
Right. So now for the use of the hallucinogenics.
Yeah, I got questions on that one.
Souls. I mean, it's like, well, there are so many traditions. There are so many things that you would use these for. I mean, how would we go about trying to figure out what they used for each individual type of ritual, you know, rite of passage,
to really get into that, we'll have to get into the iconography a little bit, because we're talking about a group of cultures that did not possess a written language. Now they had writing, but it wasn't universal. For instance, with the Ojibwe, they have these sacred birch bark scrolls, and in them, when you look at them, the closest thing your mind can go to make sense of it is it looks like hieroglyphs, and it functions very much like hieroglyphs. But if you weren't the one who wrote them, you couldn't read it. It was unique to whoever wrote it. They could tell you what they mean by it, but if you passed it to someone else and it hadn't been explained to them, they'd be hard pressed to tell you what it meant. You know. But they did have this iconography that in some sense functions like hieroglyphs. Now, how, if you were going to, without the benefit of a written language, to have a number of pottery vessels, each containing different substances, how would you label them? How would you know what's what? And the way they would do this is by putting the iconography of the being that substance was intended to either put you in touch with or to placate them, to keep them from getting in touch with you. But the being, the supernatural being with which that substance is associated, gets put on the vessel, and then it functions very much like, as Riley said, like a label on a prescription bottle. You know what's in it.
Right.
it's really a brilliant shows the practicality of their thinking, because without a written language, it really is like, what would you do, to keep the kids out of a certain substance?
Yeah.
For
But now
instance.
in the hierarchy of the community, who would be the ones that were doing these?
So it changes with the cultures always, but usually the wisdom that is imparted in these initiatory models that they're using these mounds for, the wisdom is an afterlife wisdom. It's particularly the structure of the domain that you really believe your soul is going to have to traverse when you die. And you have to know where to go, when you can get there, what you're going to encounter when you're going to get there, how to get past that barrier, that obstacle. All of these things were secret wisdom that were passed along in dramatic ritual initiations. And because it's secret wisdom, this isn't something that just every native would have known. And very, very similar to the way we see in ancient Egypt with the pyramid texts, eventually anybody who could afford one could have a Book of the Dead or could afford a coffin text that gave them those instructions. But before that stuff, before that cat got out of the bag, that stuff was for the pharaohs alone. That's why we only see it like in the Pyramid of Unas. It's on the inside of the pharaohs of these, the inside of the pyramids of these pharaohs. Now, the way it functioned among the Mississippians is very similar. So it would have been elite wisdom passed around among chiefs and other elite. Now, when I say elite, what do I mean? The shamans. And we have to be careful with the word shaman. It works when we're talking about archaeology, anthropology, because it does communicate a certain idea, but the word itself refers to Siberian magical practices, but it's still that I think your listeners are probably advanced enough to know what we mean when we say shaman and shamanism. So it was that type of person that would have had it in addition to the chiefs and the shamans. So the shamans and the chiefs have this wisdom. They know what to do when they die so that their soul can be immortal in a good place where they'd like to be. Now, eventually, this wisdom, just like in Egypt, kind of got out of their control a little bit.
Yeah.
But so the way they maintained it, the way they kind of kept it within their grasp somewhat, was by offering a service to others. They start saying, well, with the use of trance and through the use of certain hallucinogens and ritual practices, I can get my soul over there anyway, because that's the name of the game with shamanism. You can enter the realm of the dead and come back.
And still do it. So they can do their remote viewing and everything else.
Right. And so they say, I will do this for your dead loved one, and I will guide their soul there. I'll take them for a nominal fee, right? And this is mainly what we see in Moundville. Moundville was a necropolis, and Mississippians would travel from very long distances to get there to put their dead to rest because of those shamans who had opened these services up to others to say, well, I'll get them there. And they did charge a fee. A lot of people have trouble with the idea of charging fees, but you have to keep in mind that this is also dangerous. It's probably the most dangerous thing you can do is put yourself in and out of death. I'm sure you've seen that movie Flatliners from the 80s.
Yeah, I love that movie. Yeah.
Think about like Flatliners, but you're offering a service to people to get them past some of those nightmares.
Yeah. Well, I could have brought a few people over, back in the day.
Yeah. I'm sure you could.
but our stuff and their stuff are completely different stories. I mean, when we were kids and we were experimenting with this stuff, that's one thing.
It gets serious real quick, and I've done my fair share of work with those things, and I like to tell people who aren't quite as experienced that you'll probably get 2 or 3 freebies where you'll have a blast, but then after that, if you don't get to work, it'll get to work on you.
Yeah. Yes, Mom.
I got me. If I don't, Jenna won't shut up. In the we're talking about the psychedelic section of this, and there was something in the intro that it's a question that I've been asking many times. Peyote, what is it? And I know that there's multiple other different kinds, but peyote is the one I've heard much about. And and I want that DMT book, but anyhow, is this something that can be somebody can do it by themselves, or is it better to have somebody with you?
That would depend on the person.
Somebody who's never done it before. Example,
you would absolutely want someone present there with you, and with peyote, it's problematic in another way, because it is so limited as a resource.
Okay.
And some tribes, and granted, peyote isn't one of the substances that they used in the Southeast.
Okay.
But it was one that was used in the Southwest and among some tribes for thousands of years, and they rely on it for their spirituality. They rely on it for their lives to function in the way that they know them. So with something like peyote, I think it's very important to kind of leave it for them unless they invite you in and say, would you like to do this? Now, that being said, the active compound of peyote is mescaline. And mescaline isn't just limited to peyote. You can get it in other cacti that are not endangered. A good example is the San Pedro cactus that is used in South America. And I have a number of friends that grow them here. They'll grow pretty much all over the United States. If you
Don't go in Canada, too much damn cold snow.
You're in Canada. Yeah. You could probably grow it indoors. And it's a very hardy cactus, and about a 12-inch cutting is enough to get enough mescaline that would equal what you would get from the amount of peyote they're consuming for a journey like that.
Okay. So so basically this stuff comes from a cactus plant.
That's right.
Okay. So when, example, if somebody says, PD is going to send Darlene, Mama D, a plant, would that be something that would be considered that it can't cross the border?
No, it's legal. There's no limits on San Pedro. Peyote there is. It's a scheduled narcotic in most countries. But with San Pedro, we can buy it at Lowe's Garden Center here in Mississippi. I mean, it's a very common cactus. Yeah.
So if somebody, I know I'm kind of going off where you're going, but you've got me in a section that my brain is always curious about. So example, I get a plant, I get a cacti, and I'm growing it. You're saying a 12-inch piece would be.
You can cut a segment off, and it'll continue to grow. They're very
how do you process it?
Stable.
Yeah.
So traditionally, you can, if you have a little bit of experience with chemistry, you can extract the mescaline out and take it in a little capsule. But without that kind of a background, what they do traditionally is they take it, cut the spines off, and then they slice it up into they become stars afterwards because of the shape of the cactus, and they just boil them up and drink the tea.
They put a lot of them too.
I know some people who will blend the cactus and ingest the whole cactus, like they take the whole thing.
Okay.
But that will
leaving no stone unturned.
That will what?
It's leaving no stone unturned.
That's right. They don't want to leave anything behind.
And you
but
said,
just
what would
making
it
a
do if
tea
they
out of it.
if they ground it up and made like a smoothie, we'll say, for lack of a better word?
Yeah,
What would
that's
happen if they did that?
it will induce a good deal of nausea.
Oh, like we don't need that.
Well, no, with
Yeah.
this stuff, most psychedelics that
Mhm.
come from the earth and are still in the form of a plant will induce
A certain
nausea
amount of
to
nausea.
some
Okay.
degree, and that's kind of I see that as kind of nature's like rite of passage in a way. Like if you're willing to go through the nausea, it will
Mhm.
grant you that supernatural wisdom that comes after.
Okay.
Because
Mhm.
you witnessed, well, you were researching and you saw with that black drink, and I have like in this picture
Mhm.
here where the shell is, there's a little shell, it's got carvings on it, and above it is what's used, which is the picture below. It's like the dried leaves and everything, and you make them and you boil them down, you drink the black drink. Now
Mhm.
you said you saw them throwing up, but you did not get nauseous drinking that. So then
Right. So
yeah.
when the Europeans came over and observed the natives doing this black drink ceremony, and the black drink is made from the Yaupon holly, Ilex vomitoria, and it was given that name, vomitoria, because they would watch them drink it and vomit and drink again. Um, so they were under the impression that it was an emetic, that it caused vomiting.
Okay.
But when doing my own research into this, it grows all over where I live. So we had identified a number of specimens on our property and started caring for them. We had cleared vines out of them to get them more sunlight, and I wanted to develop more of a relationship with them. And so I started reading about it and found out that before coffee was being imported to the United States, that the early settlers would drink this yaupon to get their jolt in the morning because of it. It's the only native source of caffeine in North America.
Mm.
And so they're roasting the leaf and drinking it, but there's no problem with them with vomiting. So I thought, what in the world's going on here? Why are the natives vomiting from it? And so I started preparing it. I'd roast the leaves and make the tea, and I would make it more and more concentrated, trying to get a result that resembled anything like that, and I couldn't. It would not induce vomiting in me. And come to find out, it's not an emetic. The name comes from the fact that yes, they're drinking it and vomiting, but the black drink is a base that change. The additives change depending on the context in which they're drinking the black drink. So if they're going to war or to raid another group, they'll add one thing to it. If the
Okay.
ritual is for a rite of passage, for instance, to pass young boys into manhood, a different substance will be added. If the point is to guide the soul of a deceased person into the afterlife, they're still drinking black drink, but going to add
Something else is added to
different
it.
to it again. Now, those
Okay.
additives, what piqued my interest was the fact that ayahuasca, which is a South American Amazonian tea. It's a combination of two plants, one that contains NN-DMT and another that contains harmine, which is a monoamine oxidase inhibitor. Now, DMT is normally not orally active because of the presence of monoamine oxidase in the gut. It destroys the compound before it can enter the bloodstream and have an opportunity to pass the blood-brain barrier and give you an experience. So to
Okay.
remedy this, the natives in South America had found that if they add another plant to it, in this case it's the Banisteriopsis caapi vine, the monoamine oxidase inhibitor in it shuts that off and allows the DMT to get into
Do
their
its thing.
bloodstream, and they have the experience, but it also induces vomiting. So much so that ayahuasca in some regions is known as la purga, the purge.
So it purges it. Okay.
So when I saw them drinking it and vomiting, what I was really thinking in the back of my mind is, well, are they some form of ayahuasca. Is that even possible?
Mhm.
And the more I started researching and really diving into this, and especially when I got into
That's on here.
looking at the botanical assemblages, the analyses that are done in the texts of all of the plant matter that's found in their area,
Mhm.
then it started to make sense and started clicking, because they were using many psychedelic compounds, including ones that we would consider analogs to ayahuasca, and that's what I call misahuasca.
Yeah. Now, right here, that lily, didn't they add that? Is that what is that? The purple flower in the middle there.
That is
Passion
Passiflora incarnata, the passion flower.
Passion
And
flower.
the passion flower was used. The plant remains of it were found in a number of different mound complexes, and it contains harmine, just like that Banisteriopsis copy vine in South America. So the presence of the harmine in that will shut off the monoamine oxidase and allow DMT to enter your body. Now, interestingly, there's also monoamine oxidase inhibitors in the tobacco they were using, which is Nicotiana rustica, and it's in the black drink itself, which
Yeah,
I
that
found
was
very
right.
interesting.
Yeah.
Right. The closest cousin to the Ilex vomitoria is yerba mate. I'm sure you're familiar with yerba mate, caffeine rich. It's a holly, just like the Yaupon holly, but it grows in South America, and there are actually patents that
Yeah,
exist.
that's the holly there. The other one.
Yes, the one that down here looks very much like what I get here that grows here. The red berries are toxic, but they weren't using the berries. You know, that's what
You're
you'll
using leaves?
Yeah.
the leaves, yes, and the small twigs.
Okay.
Yeah, but there are patents that are in effect in the U.S. that are using yerba mate for its monoamine oxidase inhibitor contents, and they're using it specifically to aid in stopping smoking, to quit smoking.
Oh.
So
Oh, I know. I can give that to a few people.
it's and it's great. It's delicious. I love yerba mate, and the stuff, what we grow here. I say we grow it. It grows here. It's
Is
delicious.
there stuff that you can just go pick and chew on and get benefits from, or do you have to process everything?
Well, with these, you have to roast it, or the caffeine isn't. It won't work. I think
It's not like chewing on a cocoa leaf.
Decarboxylating coca.
Yeah, like a cocoa
Okay.
leaf. You know, like I heard that
decarb it. Yeah, like
I've tried chewing coca leaves one time, and I've loved it. It was the greatest thing.
Yeah. So it's not like that.
I have
No, not at
I have
all.
to say something, PD. Your knowledge of this is like freaking awesome.
Oh,
But what I like about the way you do it is that you give us the what I'll call it the Latin name, because I'm pretty sure that's what it is, even though I don't know about that. But you also let us know what the name is that people will know it most by, and you don't zip past it. You give it to us, the whole thing, and it's got a lot of people going, It's like there's one book that you have in it. Gina, put up that book again. The book, no, not that one. The picture.
Oh, which one?
It's the DMT.
The books.
Yeah.
There you go.
The other one.
That's not his book. That was just a book on DMT.
Oh, okay. Because I was gonna say, like, Zach got all of that, everything you're explaining to us.
Oh, I see what you mean.
These are different books. No, his books are these books, and
I've got the Tripping the Trail PDF, so I'm like going to be going through that one.
Yeah, he is definitely brilliant. And after actually trying to read, and I read a book a week, and I think I'm pretty
amazing.
Good at reading here. You know, this one was tough. this is a tough read for me because of all the names and everything, because I don't know what I'm reading. You know what I mean?
Oh.
And I would have to stop and look something up, look for pictures.
It's legitimately new territory for a lot of people. And
Yeah.
and anything that's new, I'm the same way. I'm a slow, deliberate reader. Now I read a lot, but when I'm embarking on something that is genuinely new to me, I might be reading that book for 2 months. You know.
Oh,
Yeah,
wow.
yeah, that's how I am with this one, because I can't, like, because I always wait, and then I read the book
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
of the show. I have not made it through this book yet.
Well, let me know when you do, and we'll talk about more.
Yeah, because I'm just like, I have to talk to him. I just have to talk to him. I had so many questions, like, it just, my brain couldn't fathom. And how come? Why is it that this wasn't studied? I mean, it's not like the evidence isn't there. I mean, how many mounds are there? Come on.
Well,
How many
it
mounds
is
destroyed?
it has been studied,
Yeah.
but the literature is so niche. It's not really.
I think everyone has the same knowledge. I mean, they're not diving deep into it. Like, what actually did happen to these people?
Now, the especially the psychedelic side of it, it really was untapped. I mean, I felt like, how can I be the only one that is thinking about this? And that was good, like it was nice to have something genuinely new to tell the world about.
Yeah.
And I love that opportunity. But it did have me scratching my head, thinking, wow, this is so incredible. And like the statues, the psychedelics aside, when I found out that they had marble statues,
Wow.
when I think about marble statues, I think about ancient Greece,
Greece.
and they receive so
Romans.
much attention, so much coverage and art and history and cultural dialogue, and they're making marble statues here that, in their own way, are sometimes more complex. Their ability to convey trance states on the faces of some of these statues, they just grab you, and you can't break away from looking at these things and feeling something of just this ancient current that is almost ignored. It really is criminal. Yeah.
I know, because everyone harped all over, everything Egypt,
Yeah. Exactly.
I
And
mean,
you kind of wonder, were there mounds in places that nobody realized what they were, and they flattened them out for whatever reason?
Oh yeah, all
And
over the place.
yeah.
Like I said, I'm in Canada, so you're talking about mounds in the U.S. Is there, like, we'll say, a book or a map or something that shows you the different mounds worldwide, like in North America?
Oh yeah, I got
There
maps here of what he talks about here. One of these maps he uses, and he's been to all.
The one on the right there, that is the map of the Mississippi. That's actually the map that I used when I was exploring the mounds in my state. But
they go all the way up and down, like into South America, into Canada, I would imagine, right?
They're still finding mounds in South America with LIDAR that they didn't know were there. But the gentleman who wrote the Path of Souls book that I learned a lot about the afterlife part of this from, Gregory Little.
Yeah.
He is also the author of this. It's the Illustrated Encyclopedia of Native American Indian Mounds and Earthworks, and it's huge. But he covers everything, and he's brilliant. And he got into this in the most interesting way. He didn't say, "Oh, I'm interested in mounds, I'm going to go study them." He had a dream that he was basically told, you're going to visit every mound in the continent, and you're going to write a book about it, and you don't have a choice. And he spent the next
had those people have that
several decades. He has literally physically gone to every single mound site and documented it.
Wow. So is it true, though, that it's still the three basic, the flat, the round, and the ridge?
Well, but like I said, there's the
And
crescent.
the crescent and the snake.
Yeah,
But that's
they can be in the shapes of animals. There are some that are in the shapes of panthers. So one of the supernatural beings that is encountered on this path of soul's journey can be encountered, and if you do encounter him, it's an indication that you've gone wrong somewhere. You don't want to encounter this guy. But his name in one culture is Mississippi, and it's the same root as Mississippi. But he's a giant black panther with a very long tail, and he is the ruler of the below world, of the underworld. Now, he is also the great serpent, a feathered serpent that is represented by the constellation Scorpio. What we see as Scorpio, they saw as this great serpent constellation, and he's covered in feathers. Well, when the winter solstice comes around, Scorpio, you don't see it in the sky at night here. It stays below the horizon, so you don't see Scorpio throughout the winter time. During that time, that's what he does. He hibernates. During that time, he sheds his feathers, and he becomes what's called the underwater panther. And he retires to the below world, just like a bear would retire to a den, and he stays in the below world during that time. But when Scorpio ascends back into the sky, he reassumes his feathers, becomes the giant serpent, and goes back up again. But there are mounds shaped like him. They can be any number of shapes.
But they had Mayans use that too, right? I mean, they have those temples, but what do you call it? The tepi. Help me out here.
You don't go Beckley Tepe?
Yes, I have a problem with that. It's the serpent is on both sides of the stairway going up to the top, ascending, and then when the sun comes and hits it, and the shadow, goes across the whole thing like it's the side and everything, and that's their deity. That's their, what they worship there.
And they also, you'll see the scorpion on pillar 43, 42 or 43. And it shows the same thing, the horizon of the earth with the scorpion descending below it, and above it is what could be a vulture, is usually described as a vulture. Same thing with the Mississippians. The vulture is the Cygnus constellation. So for the Greeks, it's a swan. For the Native Americans in the Mississippian regions, it's a vulture, and it's right above.
Is that why they did like these bird people and stuff like that? One stone there that's right next, like above the shell, the stone on the side. On the opposite side of that stone is got that crisscross pattern, right? Like diamond, like the skin of a snake.
That's right.
It's like the both, right? So it's like
that's right. And that's the Birdman. Now the Birdman, we could take it as a supernatural, and it often is. Sometimes it's equated with the sun god, the corn god. You'll see it equated with red horn, morning star. These are all different figures that might be the same, might not. Always depends on the culture. But he has also been interpreted in some cases as a shaman performing as this being, maybe perhaps possessed by him, but in any case acting as him in a ritual drama, and you'll see that a lot. And in some cases he won't have the hooked beak like a falcon. Instead, he has a coiled proboscis like a moth, and his wings will even look more moth-like. And this is because there's another supernatural, a moth. They call him Mothra or Mothman. That's right. And I don't know if you're familiar with the Mothman Chronicles, but it all comes from a Mississippian group out there. Remember it was originally this curse from a chief, and that region was occupied by the Mississippians, Point Pleasant out there.
Yep. Yeah.
So, and the reason the moth shows up, what he's doing, why he's important, is the moth has been identified, the species, and it's Manduca sexta, which is the sphinx moth or hawk moth, and it only lays its eggs and feeds upon tobacco or datura. So it's.
I know when I saw a picture of that, and I almost put it on here, and I don't think I actually got that.
That's one of my biggest obsessions with this, is that the relationship with this moth, because it's so fascinating. When we talk about tobacco, the nicotine for most animals and insects, it's toxic and oftentimes fatal if they encounter it. It's so much so that you can use it as a pesticide. I know people who garden that will grow Nicotiana rustica, make tea out of it, and they spray their other plants with it to keep the bugs off, and it works great.
I wonder if it'll kill grubs.
Oh, black ants.
It might.
It might.
But
it
won't kill this moth, and it won't kill the caterpillar form. So when the natives observe the caterpillar eating the leaves and surviving, already they knew something's sacred, something interesting about this that they interpreted as sacred. Now, the caterpillar, it's not just that the nicotine doesn't kill him. There's a protein in his body that allows him to retain the nicotine in his body and eject it at will as a defense mechanism.
Ooh.
And so think about what we're saying. It can breathe it out, or it can vomit it out as a defense mechanism. Now, the natives took this a step further, and they actually were using it, the caterpillar itself, as the drug. So they would have young boys who were passing into manhood put the caterpillar in their mouths, and there's stories about this where they tell them, don't chew it, hold it in your mouth, and spit like you would if it was tobacco. So they're getting the nicotine from from the caterpillar, not from the tobacco in this case. Wow. That's when I say sophisticated, that's what I mean.
I know, they needed like a whole slew of chemists.
Yeah.
you know? Honest to God. I mean, they must have had, a mound for them. Right? So here you go. You go experiment with all these various plants, bugs, whatever is available to you.
Everything.
Mix, match, see what works, and then you put it in the jars and you label it.
Right. Yeah. And when the
pharmacy
caterpillar goes through its transition into the moth, many of these compounds are still retained in its body, and it protects the moth. So if a bird comes along and tries to eat one, it realizes real quick it's bitter. It makes me sick when I eat it, and they learn not to eat that species. So there's no evidence of them eating moths, but it could have been done. And I highly doubt that it wasn't experimented with, but in any case, it did result in this moth becoming one of their most important symbols in terms of access to the afterlife journey, because we take tobacco for granted. Everybody smokes.
Oh, God, yeah.
I grew up with lung issues, so I never smoked. Didn't know what that was like.
It's COPD and emphysema now, but I smoked from when I was 9 years old till I was 28.
Yeah, I had never smoked, but when I was researching this book, I thought, well, how can tobacco be that sacred? If it did that much, people would be experiencing it every day. They smoke all the time, but it's a different type of tobacco. The commercial tobacco is Nicotiana tabacum. This is Nicotiana rustica, and it can be between 3 and 9 times as potent as the other stuff. Plus, it has those other alkaloids in it. And when the shamans are using it Like in South America, when they were observed, the shamans down there were observed using it. They would make cigars that were 3 feet long and smoke
my
the
God.
whole thing.
Oh my
And when
God.
you get level,
would be
that
wild.
level,
That first puff, and
it
you'd have to be zoning.
effectively would kill them. I mean, they would, their heart rate and their breathing rate would slow to such a degree that they looked dead.
Wow.
And so that's when they say that they're going to put themselves in the afterlife, in the realm of the dead. That's what I mean by they're really doing it, and it's dangerous. So you can see why they would charge a fee, because they're really putting themselves on the brink, you know.
Yeah. So
And it's a lot of work.
Serious faith
Yeah.
that, you know, what you're doing is worth it, and you're performing the task at hand too, you know.
Right.
And then come back. I mean, and tell about it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's the fulfillment of the formula. You know, going there is one thing, but you have to come back, and when you bring back the story, that's the medicine for everyone. We think about medicine in terms of, I'm sick, I need to take this to make me better. But medicine can be as simple as a narrative of someone's journey in that realm that gives you just that little bit more faith that there's more here than just me and my plight, you know.
Yeah. Right. Oh, and then you even, I mean, because I'm used to doing a 2-hour show, and like
we can go a little longer. I'm okay right now. We haven't been interrupted.
Because you have got
here, you have a
you're
lot
just
of
blowing my mind. I love this.
Yeah, you have a lot of reliefs. You have a lot of cave drawings. You have, I mean, they're, you know, for someone so sophisticated, like I think their drawings would have been better. Oh, moths.
That's the
Oh,
moth.
trust me, you know I saw those because I work with butterflies.
Oh,
and
yeah?
I call moths my nighttime butterflies.
Very cool.
So tell me about these guys here.
The pair there, those are from Etowah, and the single one, that one is from Tennessee. And they are both, those are good examples of the state of trance they're able to convey, especially the single one on the right. It's known as Sandy, is what that one is called among archaeologists. And it's actually the state artifact of Tennessee.
Yeah. This is the color picture. You do have colored pictures in the middle. In the middle of the book, there are color pictures. So you have pictures referenced as you're reading, and then in the center section you have color pictures, and you have the plates that are in here as well. It's
how long did it take you to write this book?
This would have taken a while because this is a lot of research. I mean, I can't imagine.
I think the research and the writing was right at 2 years.
Wow, I would even think it would be longer than that because it's really profound. And like I said, you know, I usually read right through a book. I can't do it. I'm like, nope. And then what it did is it sparked me to go. I watched some videos. I watched some videos on the Mounds people. I watched, you know, a whole bunch of different things. I even watched one that had Leonard Nimoy in it. Yeah. From
how cool is that?
It was really neat, you know, and he was narrating, and I mean, you could definitely tell how old it was.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
World.
But it just seemed like the same. It was the same information again and again and again and again. You know. So I like where you're going because you're putting a whole new
angle,
a whole new light
different.
This whole thing. I mean, because they really do mirror the Egyptians in so many ways.
In a lot of ways, yeah.
Well, you know, but what happened to them? Where did they go? What?
Well, with the Mississippians, you know, they're often discussed as having disappeared. They just disappeared, and it's not really that simple. They went away as they existed, but they still exist in various tribes. You know, the Chickasaw, the Cherokee, the Ojibwe, or the Chippewa, as I think they're better known up north where you guys are. The Osage, you know, all of these are the descendants of the Mississippians. So they didn't just disappear, but they did
like split up, migrate.
make a number of transformations into other ways of life. And you also have to consider that when they disappeared was during colonization. And so when colonization happened, there's a great quote. I can't remember who said it. It was a chief, but he was talking about war, Native Americans and war and fighting. And we think about war because we do it on such grand scales as something terrible. But for them, it wasn't like that. It wasn't so enormous. And he said, we natives, we do war like you play baseball, and what he meant is that's their way of life. If a man is going to acquire honors, it's largely dependent on how successful he was in a raid or in a war. And once colonization happened, that was taken from them. Laws were put in place.
And there was a story that there were 5 Mississippians came upon 5, I think Soto's people, and they said they wanted to fight each other because the numbers were the same, so they wanted to fight each other. And it came out that the natives hardly had scratches, there was like 2 down here, 3 severely wounded.
I bet.
And it's just like, so they would know, they would learn, hopefully that those 5 that were in that fight would go back and say, hey, don't do it.
Right.
Not smart here.
Right.
But of course, but we invade. That's what we do.
And they invaded too, but that's the difference, is that was their way of life. When you hear a Native American that's kind of bitter about colonization, and they have every right to be, but they'll say things like, give us back our land, well, rarely are they thinking, and then I'm going to give that land back to the tribe we took it from, and then give it back to the ones they took it from, because it is a long line of that give and take, but that was their way of life. It's very culture, like, we don't want to be ethnocentric in the way we think about other cultures. And and again, when it's something like war, we do war so brutally and so on a scale that is simply unimaginable to a Mississippian in that time, in that place.
I wish we could go back to that.
Yeah,
I do too.
We make things last forever, whereas there was a specific time, and that was it. That was done. And now these are like years and years. Like,
they were living, they were thriving, they were learning, they were doing for the community. However, they did do a lot of sacrificing.
Sacrifices it's the name of the game in virtually every religion before Christianity became the dominator religion. In Judaism, they sacrificed. In ancient Greece, they sacrificed. In Africa, they sacrifice. So sacrificing, to put that in perspective, to sacrifice, say, a goat for someone in Africa, in Nigeria, we'll say in Nigeria, practicing lukumi, if they were to sacrifice a goat to one of the orishas, then that means they're forfeiting the milk and the meat that would come from that goat that could feed their family for I don't know how long,
Yeah, there's like a really good reason for doing that. It's not just willy-nilly.
That's right. So for us to think in the same terms, it would be like, go empty out your entire pantry, and the end result would be comparable. It's the idea of death that puts a lot of people off. the
Right.
death of the
Well, there's
animal.
death. There's death. Death is in death rituals. Death like that is a sacrifice. That's a true sacrifice.
Right.
And then there's the sacrifices that the people, the stereotype, the Hollywood sacrifice. Okay, like what they portrayed voodoo to be. Sacrificing.
Oh, God,
This and
yeah.
that.
Right.
Between
And that's nothing even what it
it's,
looks like in
no,
practice.
no.
That's right.
no, it's not. It's Hollywood. But that's the thing. That's
That's
the
what people think. That's what people will put into their brain. Ooh, well, I saw it on this show.
You're
But I
absolutely
mean,
right.
I think the way the world is, this is just my view. I think the way the world is, we're becoming more open-minded about things. I mean, come on, back in the day, witches were burnt at the stake. Hello,
That's
now
right.
witches are your next door neighbor. Well, yeah, technically,
Mhm.
yeah. But it's there is not such a bad thing. So eventually they'll realize that, sacrifice in this respect was for a reason, not just
Right.
like, the heck.
But blood rituals, sacrifices, they still go on. Like hoodoo, they still do, but they use every part of the animal. Every single part of the animal is used, whether
Nothing
it's
goes to waste.
And even in Greece and ancient Judaism, it wasn't just that the animal was killed and left there to rot.
right.
It wasn't considered in Greece, for example. It wasn't considered a sacrifice unless all the people at the temple ate the part they were supposed to eat.
Mhm.
It was divvied up and quartered in a way that a certain portion was left that changed with the god, just like the animal you sacrifice changed with what god you're giving it to. But then the rest of it had to be eaten by the people present, or it wasn't considered finished. It wasn't a true sacrifice.
Yep.
And that's the same idea that was inherited in Christianity that becomes the mass, the liturgy. When they're consuming the god in the form of the bread or in the wine, but
Mhm.
they're taking it into themselves and communing with the god through the sacrifice of the animal that has become the god through sanctification.
Mhm.
It's a very universal formula. We
Right.
see it all over the place. But eating it is in most cases essential for it to be considered a sacrifice at all.
Right. Now,
Mhm.
you just said something that just sort of caught my little Catholic brain. When you said the sacrifice, they do still eat parts of it, and you're saying Catholicism didn't. Technically, no, but when you get, it's the body of Christ, the blood of Christ. You're getting the Eucharist, the Holy Eucharist, and then you're getting the red wine. It's still, they're not devouring the part of that actual person, but in your mind, if you think of it that way, that's the same thing. It's
Well,
still
that's what I said. That's exactly what I meant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Damn.
When I'm talking about the mass, the liturgy, I'm Orthodox, so I say liturgy, but
Right. Same.
mass is the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
But
All religions are the same, just different different.
that's
Different
what
word.
I'm trying to say is that the sacrifice
Mhm.
is still present in the Eucharistic sacrifice that
Yeah.
then must be consumed
Yeah.
for the communion with the God to take place.
Right. Right.
That's exactly
Okay.
what I meant. Yeah.
Yep. Now, tell me about this guy here.
Makwa Manito.
He's
So
got a little medicine bowl in his hand there, and that's very important.
a Manitou is kind of like a god. I don't like to call it God because our concept of God is obviously different from the way they thought about it. They're often called supernaturals, and I like that.
Okay.
But he's a supernatural that is very important in the Ojibwe. The Ojibwe created a sodality, a secret society of shamans. And in the Ojibwe, they are the ones that perpetuated this afterlife journey model, the path of souls. And it's called the Midewiwin, and known as the Grand Medicine Society. And the Midewiwin has a series of rites, of rituals. When we could think about it kind of like Freemasonry, it's a degree structure. you pass through each rite sequentially. So your first degree, second degree, third degree, and then and some version, fourth degree is called the Ghost Lodge, and that's the afterlife stuff.
Okay.
But the wisdom of these degrees and how to put them on, and the spirits that are involved in them, was brought to them by Makwa, by Bear. Bear comes to Earth from the other realm and brings with him these pouches that are called pitakas, and they're sacred bundles. And sacred bundles are how sacred wisdom is passed around in a number of different Mississippian groups. And what it is it's a bundle that once you unfold it, there is everything that has to do with the myth, the story, the narrative behind a particular supernatural. There's usually a statue that is also a pipe for the supernatural. There might be a cloth with a certain pattern on it. But all of these things both enable them to do the ritual in question, and using it, they tell the story, pass on the story of that supernatural and what purpose they serve. Now, the statues are often in the form of a pipe because the act of smoking through it animates it. It makes it kind of wakes the god up that is depicted on it. Now, the practice of animating statues is very ancient. It still exists in a number of African diaspora religions like Vodou. It exists in Palo Mayombe, and Santeria Lukumi. It was definitely practiced in ancient Egypt, ancient Greece. For example, a mummy. When a mummy was mummified and placed in that case, once it's put in that golden case and the face of it, the mask is put on it, they're considered a statue, and the mummy is in there because the statue incorporated the ancestor. This was especially true in Africa among the Bantu. The Bantu were in the Congo region, and after the diaspora, when the slaves were taken to different places, they preserved their religion in a number of different cultures, voodoo being one of them. But their ancestors are what put them in contact with the quote unquote gods. So they would turn the remains of the ancestor into a statue of these gods. Now, with the Native Americans, the Mississippians, this statue is in the pipe. It doesn't involve ancestor remains or anything like that, but you can think about it as everything in the pitaka contributes to the animation of the pipe, with the final cherry on the cake being pulling the smoke through it. Now, depending on what they're smoking, because it wouldn't be tobacco in every case. In some cases, they're smoking datura. There are stories about them smoking datura through calumets, which are like peace pipes.
Right.
They had a smoking blend that would change with regions called Kinnikinnick. That's still very, very popular among some native groups. There's a blend that we used to get here from a group of Lakotas up in Memphis that would make it for us. That was absolutely delicious flavor, and but it was just herbs and roots and leaves that they would collect.
See, I admire I admire the rituals. Like, I went to a funeral. A friend of mine's daughter passed, unfortunately, but she was a Native American, and half and half. Okay, so half English, half Native American, and the funeral was half and half. There was a priest, and then there were the Indians, and the Indian part of it was amazing. And they smoked the pipe, and they were, blowing the smoke for, the spirits of the north, the south, the east, the west, and did that whole ritual. Everybody was in tears. I mean, everybody was in tears. It was just the most beautiful, heartfelt
Yeah.
honest passage.
And
Really.
probably ancient practice.
Yeah,
Mhm.
you could ever imagine, you know.
Mhm.
And I could just see the people that, you know, how could people say that these people are like savage or they're this or they're that and have that much compassion and that much knowledge and that much wisdom about nature, Mother Earth, preservation of the community as a whole? How can you say they're the savage?
Right.
was-
Savage was the favorite pejorative
Yeah.
of ethnologists, anthropologists, all the way up until the early 20th century. They would still use those terms in the texts to describe them. And even when you see them being discussed with respect, they still will call them savages. It's mind-boggling. I mean, of course they could be savage, and if
Yeah.
you overstep.
Anybody can.
And we're not? Come on.
That's right. That's exactly
We're
right.
worse. We are worse.
And when you're talking about being fully present, most of us can't be fully present in the moment because we don't know. We've become so normalized to all of these buffers and cushions that exist between us and the world that we never really encounter the world. We encounter the names of things at best. When, like, a good example is a car. I don't know much about cars. I couldn't fix a car if I had to. I definitely couldn't build one. I know what button to push to turn it on and turn it off.
Yep.
But if it ever messed up, I wouldn't be able to fix it. And
No.
it's
I have a
because
Bob fix it.
Yeah, Bob.
it's because I'm completely out of touch with the reality of
Yeah.
the complexity of that machine. I put it in a neat little box called car. And because I do that, I can set it on a shelf and I don't have to think about all of the blood, sweat, tears, and brilliance that went into arriving at that amazing invention that
Mhm.
did we not have, the world would stop turning. Well,
Right.
these natives, they don't have that problem. They know exactly what it took to get the moccasins on their feet. They know exactly what it took to get from point A to point B and why they came there and what they were doing. It was a completely different world they existed in. And when you say, I wish we could go back, I do too. I think it would. We've gotten too big for our britches that we couldn't go back if we wanted to. But
we're destroying our planet. I mean, I feel bad for my grandson and his, that generation and the generations of our children's, to come.
Yeah.
Because what's going to be here?
Mhm.
That's right. Well, I got high hopes for them because, we definitely haven't left them many cards.
Yeah. But I think the thing is with the generations now and the generations to come, it's going to be a different breed of people because they're more, I personally, personal opinion, is the children that are growing now. My niece, she's got such knowledge that like, where did this come from? But because her mother allows her to stretch her mind, stretch her visions, a lot of the people are like, I worked at a store and somebody just one time said, oh, just ignore her. She's talking to her invisible friend. And it's just, no, it's not a phase. Allow her to stretch that part of her knowledge, her mind. It allows them. So the woman was like, oh my God, you're the first person to ever understand it. I was like, because we've lived through all this shit. We realize we get to see the stuff that we've caused, the mess that we've caused. And when we go back and learn things about like all the stuff that you're teaching us, all the stuff that we get to learn through what I said in the chat, your knowledge would take us days to just get even just that much of your knowledge for us to understand. You teach us things that we've forgotten about. These are things that I've never known about this. I've touched on a few things here and there in my realm of knowledge, but the mounds and what they mean and the people that built them, it's not something. So I think if we learn about them and then we allow it to be big enough for our children to learn it,
Yeah.
it's,
If we value life as much as they did.
Yeah.
Life and death.
Yeah.
I mean,
Right,
they have a value on it. It's important. It's important your journey in the afterworld.
Exactly.
It's important to make your destination. It's important that you need all these tools to navigate through that.
Yeah.
I think you're right, and with my son, my youngest Marcus, I just try to keep him safe and let him kind of go and find what he finds. And when I find something, I take him with me. He's my partner in crime. Every mound I went to, he came with me. And
Nice.
and everything that he is open to learning about, I try my best to teach him. But at the same time, I'm trying to learn from him too. I'm watching really close, and a lot of the times thinking, okay, what did I lose that you still have? Let me see what you're going to do with this pile of leaves. One of the things that really fascinated me when he was really young was the capacity for spontaneous ritual that would emerge with sticks and leaves, and if we'd find bones or something. I was watching ritual behavior emerge from nowhere that just stunned me. And a lot of the techniques that I still use today when I practice ritual are things I watched him do before he could talk. So I have high hopes for them. But I do think they're going to pull us through.
I know that it's kind of a 50-50. I mean, there is the batch of people that just plow through everything with just reckless abandon, right? Just plow through. And then there are the ones that have a little more compassion, that have a little more, we're more joined with the energy field and trying to better, and it's like, it just seems like a struggle sometimes that wavelength just isn't making it where it should, I feel like it should be a lot stronger. But speaking of rituals and things too, like this wood hinge that's there at the monk mound, and it's like, talk about ritual. The center post lines up with the coming when the sun rises, it comes up over the mound there, and it hits that center pole. I mean, everything is so well thought out. Everything that they do.
It's a massive calendar that they're immersed in, and a lot of the complexes function the same way. So if you're standing on one mound and you look in the direction of other mounds surrounding you, whether or not the sun rises or sets in line with these other mounds, that's what tells them if it's time to plant, if it's time to harvest.
Right. So
it's an indication of solstices, equinoxes, and as well as that long lunar calendar, that 18.6 year cycle. So they'll look and it tells them. Now the game they're playing, chunky, it can change. That you'll hear the Cherokee ball game, which is more like stick ball. But this is chunky, and what they're doing, this round stone, it's called a discoidal, and it'll be rolled, and people will stand with sticks, kind of like spears, like cane, and they throw it, and depending on the tribe, and some of them, the goal is to hit the discoidal, and some of them, it's to make the stick land where you think the discoidal will stop. Right. But in both cases, it's training for the Path of Souls journey, because the Path of Souls, the way it works is there is a portal in the sky that's located in the constellation of Orion. They recognized it as the chief's hand. Of course, Orion is a Greek conception, and the portal is, you'll see it in the art, as a hand with what looks like an eye in the palm.
Okay.
It's not an eye, it's that portal. And so the soul, you think about it this way: the constellation rises in the east and sets in the west, right? It goes overhead. So when it sets in the west, you've got a small window of time before that portal descends below the horizon. Once it does, your window's closed.
Right.
So
You
you had to launch your soul as an arrow, in the form of an arrow, into that portal before it disappeared. So when they're throwing that cane at that rolling stone, that's their soul trying to hit that moving target.
Right.
Everything is sacred. We think about games as pastime. There is no pastime when the secular doesn't exist, when everything is sacred. Even the games are telling you something about the secrets of the universe.
I know, it's pretty amazing. You know what I kept thinking of is bocce, because I'm Italian. And I'm like playing the bocce ball. You get the Pauline, you're throwing the Paulina, but you let it stop, and then you're throwing your balls and who's closest, But this is, that what do you call that stuff?
A discoidal.
Discoidal. All right, so that's rolling, and then you got to sit there and go, all right, now how fast? All right, now I'm going to throw it, and get closer, and everyone's doing that. And there are even sacred sticks from sacred trees that they get these things from, and especially
they come from the honey locust tree, and specifically ones that are struck by lightning.
Yes.
And that makes them sacred. This is a honey locust, also known as Gladitsia triacanthos. It was previously classified as Acacia americana. But the roots, the bark of the roots of this tree is loaded with NN-DMT. And when they're playing the game, they will chew the roots.
And put it on.
But they can't swallow it, remember, because it's not active orally. But they did figure out it's active transdermally. So they chew the roots, spit it out, and rub it all over their bodies. They're having out-of-body experiences out here playing this game. And wrapped up in it.
This could be dangerous.
It could be. In some cases, it probably was. There are a number of scholars that argue that this game was life or death, and
could be.
So the powers of there are two teams. One team represents the powers of light, one represents the powers of darkness. And they're acting out a myth, this myth where the hero twins, which are they're universal, they are avenging the death of their father, who was killed by the powers of darkness, who cheated at the ball game. And so they're avenging him. And the court on which they avenge him, there's a court at almost all of the mound complexes that is as sacred as a church, as a temple. When you walk out on that court, you're on holy ground. And the same thing was with the Mayans with their ball game. They would make these rubber balls from rubber trees and try to hit them into kind of like a basketball, but it's sideways. It had similar like cosmic connotations. And depending on who won was a big deal. It's not that they want the powers of light to win, so whoever plays the side that represents the power of light gets to beat the other side. They're playing a real game, and the ones who are playing the powers of darkness have just as much opportunity to win as you. And so the result has cosmic implications. They in some cases they would read it as an oracle in a way. They might be playing to find out what the fate of the crop is going to be this year. And whoever won, that's how they would ascertain, much like flipping a coin, yes or no, heads or tails, light or dark, which is going to happen, So even games, simple games,
are learning things.
So simple.
It's just so amazing. Everything about it is so amazing. So the little otter,
yeah. So otter is like bear. There are different tribes, and even in the different tribes, there are different traditions depending on how spread out they are. In some versions of the Mitaweewin, it's Otter who brings the sacred patakas that starts the Mitaweewin, the Grand Medicine Society. And Otter is he's cute in that picture too. I love that picture.
Really is,
Shout
yeah.
out to Angie. She's the artist that did the paintings of the four they're called Manitou or Manitos. But yeah, he's a lot like Bear, but obviously a lot smaller and maybe a little.
Definitely. Yep, and you have an owl here. But I mean, it's just so fascinating. And I like that you put the colored pictures in here too, because when you see the black and white and then you see them in color and then you see,
That's
the details. Sometimes the details show better. Show better when you see it in the color, and sometimes it shows better when you see it black and white. So
that's exactly why I really pushed for the color plates, because I had looked at them, on your phone you can use filters, and I had looked at a number of the images I wanted to use in black and white, and it just was not doing it for me. Some of them you have to see the color to get the nuance, especially when we get to the caves. When the pictures of caves, the black and white ones, you can't even tell what's going on.
The layers, the stone, the colors that they use, everything about it is just amazing. All right, I want to just tell you that it's like 9:30. Are you doing okay still?
Yeah, we're okay. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I haven't. Nobody's busted in and said, "Hey, we need you," so we're good.
So if he busted in, it's fine. We're all about it.
I'm sorry. Go ahead, Mama.
I said if he busts in, we're good, because we always have animals that bust in. Sometimes I know it's different because it's your child, but we're all good.
The spaghetti style here.
Spaghetti. Yep. So they call it spaghetti style because they didn't know what those squiggly little lines are in there. It was a big puzzle for a long time. But when I was reading the ethnographies, it clicked for me what I'm looking at. And it comes from a story of, remember we were talking about rites of passage earlier, trials, putting boys through. And these trials that are real rituals come from myths, and they're acting out these myths. The myth in this case is one of the hero twins is trying to prove to the highest god figure, the supernatural, that he's his son, his long lost son, because one of the hero twins was lost. And that's why they're called Lodge Boy and Thrown Away, because thrown away, the placenta was thrown away, and they didn't know there was a little baby in it. And so he got raised by the spirits of the below world. And so he comes back and he wants to tell his father, hey, I'm really your son. And so the father puts him through a series of tests. And in this one, the tests all involve the honey locust. And the very last test, he has a big pot boiling full of roots from the honey locust, which was the first indication that they are consuming the roots of the honey locust for the DMT, one of the additives to the black drink, because they boil the black drink. But he has the boy get into the pot with the boiling roots. And when it doesn't hurt him, he realizes, oh, you really are supernatural. You must be my son. So that gorget or gorget it's carved from a whelk shell, and it's a depiction of that boy. You're looking down on it. So an aerial view of the pot full of the boiling roots. So what they called spaghetti in the old days, because they didn't know what it was, what we're looking at are the roots of the honey locust boiling with Thrown Away.
That's insane, right? It's all the things. And even one of the trials was that he was sitting over those big, huge thorns there.
That's right. He tells him to have a seat in the corner.
Yeah.
And doesn't tell him that underneath the cloth is all of those thorns clustered up, but it doesn't hurt him. He does just fine. That's the first test. The second test is to play against his other kids in the Chunky game. It's Cherokee though, so it's the Cherokee ball game, more like stick ball, but wants him to play against them. And the highest god's wife knows that he's outnumbered, because he's playing 1 against 3, I think it is, when they represent the powers of darkness, and they've outnumbered him. And so she tells him to use his lightning. So the hero twins are thunder and lightning deities. They have the power of thunder and lightning. And so she tells him to use his lightning and act like he's going to shoot the honey locust tree. And that if he does that, the god, that his father will panic and stop the game, because he does not want to lose the honey locust tree. Mm-hmm. And so that's how he doesn't pass the second test so much as
smoke and mirrors
out of it. Yeah.
That's well, that was mom being smart.
That's right. And she knew, I think in the back of her head, she knew, because he's a twin. He looks just like the other one,
Right.
But the father, what it really boils down to is the father knows too, but
I think
you have to be a man.
You have to do you have to prove yourself to me, and
in indigenous cultures, the only way to become a man is to be made a man by the other men. And so what's really going on is he's making him a man.
Mm-hmm.
Right. So like in some cultures, it's the markings or the.
That's right. Yeah. Some of them will knock a single tooth out.
Yeah.
And Robert Bly, you ever heard of Robert Bly?
I did through you.
He's a great author. He wrote a book called Iron John, which is it's a book about manhood. But he looks at a lot of these different indigenous traditions where the boy is marked, and he calls it the sacred wound, that you receive a wound from the men, and that wound later in life becomes the source of your power, of your healing and your magic. And but he names a number of different scarrings and markings, and kind of talks a little bit about what that might communicate to an individual who has that marking. But in one of the cases, they actually, they knock a single tooth out.
Wow. It's just, it goes on and on and on and on and on. Like this, to be like an archaeologist or, anyone that studies all of this, I mean, there's just not enough time.
Oh yeah. There's so much out there, and to have to choose would be the hardest part. I'm sure you noticed with my literary output, each book is drastically different than, they're all kind of tied together by certain threads, like ritual, rites of passage, soul ascent motifs, but I just have to kind of, I follow my nose, and if I had to just pick one thing and do it over and over again, I probably wouldn't do it.
You broke the insanity.
Yeah, that's a good point. Maybe my wife might not agree, but
yeah, how does she put up with this? I mean, are you still like, do you want to go see every mound like Gregory did? What do you want to?
No, the task that I was called to with this book wasn't nearly as drastic as Greg's, with having to visit every mound. But she's amazing. She's always supported me in my research, no matter how weird it gets. She goes on trips with me, and is always right there. And the probably the most annoying part is the books. When you're researching a topic, you understand, it ain't cheap. And once you get into a certain caliber of research, they really ain't cheap. It's like every other book is $250, and you know,
Yeah. I mean, to get a good Book of the Dead, forget about it. You know?
yeah.
So, I mean, yeah.
So, you know, she's my rock. You know, it's because of her that I can do this kind of thing. She's a nurse. And she works at the NICU here in Tupelo.
Oh, God bless her. Oh my God.
She loves it, but her stability in those terms is what allows me to be not so stable and say, you know what, Bacchus, you want to go to a mound in Alabama right now?
I'm sorry. Did you say Bacchus?
Yeah, that's his son's
That's
name.
your son's name? Oh my God, what an interesting name.
It's the god of wine.
Greek god of wine, yeah.
No wonder I like it. There you go. But
Wine
no, I love
divine
The
madness.
Italian knows this. You know, we have, you know,
I'm not Italian.
Bacchus. I love Bacchus, the symbolism of Bacchus. I used to have a beautiful plaque until I was moving and I broke it.
Oh,
I know. That's one
Bacchus is
these days.
he's my kind of, no matter where I am in the research, he's always kind of right over my shoulder. You know,
That's amazing. That's awesome.
That's nice.
So if he ends up being, you know, half as smart,
I mean the God, but yes, he is always.
The God is on one shoulder and your son's on the other.
Yeah, we could definitely say that, but
Bacchus is right there. No, Bacchus is amazing as the spirit. I mean, I love Bacchus.
He is kind of what does tie most of this together, because you know he's a god of nature, of death and resurrection, rebirth notions, but also that dip into madness. And I feel like when the inspiration comes to study a new topic, to write a new book, that inspiration, there's a mania to it, you know, an insatiable kind of a hunger. And that's what I mean by the God, is always seems to kind of be there putting me on, like kind of wants to see how far I'll take it.
You're channeling. Bacchus right there, and it's like, you know, like when Gregory was told about his book, you're going to see every mound, and you're going to do that's channeling.
Yeah,
you know, for sure. Up, and if you ask, you will receive.
And that's why he got the name he did, because that's the one personality that always seems to be there, and he was dismembered, you know, in the myth, and I do kind of feel that when I'm in my research, like everything kind of comes apart.
You're there, you hear, you're there.
Yeah. And but at the end, it all comes back together. I have this artifact, this book that is almost like a talisman, like an amulet of this territory that I've been in, that, you know, the book is almost like proof I don't have to go back into it, because it is so maddening, the mania of obsession. And when you get inspired, when the muse hits, it's like there's nothing you can do.
You just gotta follow
and still function other than that thing, you know.
Right. But I mean, I know you're in the Fox Den, right? So Fox is my spirit.
Yeah, that's perfect. That's perfect.
And what they do is they are the keepers of the veil, or basically, you know, they guide you. You know, the spirit realm is here, and we're here, and the Fox is right here. And, you know, it's like you got to get permission from them to cross that border.
Yeah,
you
they're
know?
kind of mercurial in that regard, because they do. I didn't think about that, but they're liminal in that they're terranean, but they also go underground. They burrow, right? So they cross the barrier.
Yep.
Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah. So, you know, it's like and if you're not supposed to go too far, they will hurt you. You know. Mm-hmm. You know. And when you are to go further, you can go only so far until they stop you again. And that's as far as you're going to get into that next realm. You know,
I take them when I see a fox. I usually, you know, I'm big on reading the environment like a text, which is really what an omen is, you know. But when I see a fox, I usually think, okay, it's time to be sneaky, like something for some reason I need to be especially sneaky
Stealth
about
and
doing right now.
yeah, but you got to use this,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
caution, it's stealth, it's
Cunning.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot of things. It's a lot of things. I mean, and then depending on which culture you want to go to too, and if you want to go into kitsunes with the 9 tails, and
Let me see that again. I didn't see that.
this is it's a
Oh, I see now. Yeah.
onyx, right? Not onyx,
Beautiful.
tiger eye.
Tiger's eye.
Yeah, and
That's
it's
beautiful.
got the 9 tails, right?
Yeah.
All my stones here,
The 9 tails. Isn't that
The 9 tail when a
a
kitsune
shaman?
gets
And
it's 9 tails, then it's at its full max life, and then they can morph and they can change shape, and they're shapeshifters. But that's when they're at their full
what did you call it?
kitsune.
Kitsune, Japanese.
Mhm.
Kits-
Yeah.
Very cool.
We'll have to look it up.
Yeah, I will.
It's
Kits-
fun. It's fun
good.
research. Yeah, there's a lot to know. But they live, when you get to 900 and 1,000 years old, you have all your 9 tails, and now you can be a shapeshifter.
Wow.
You know.
Very cool. I love that kind of stuff.
Oh, I do too. What is your next project? What are you looking? What direction are you going into? Have you ever thought of folklore or things like that?
I'm very interested in folklore. I've got 3 books in the works right now that I've had to put on hold because we're working on a documentary. Mhm. The documentary is looking at my second book, The Angels in Vermilion book. And it's basically following the timeline of that. What that book is it's a deep dive into a specific alchemical tradition where they were using DMT via a certain species of acacia. And so I'm tracing the transmission of that lineage as it fed into Freemasonry eventually in the 18th century. And in it, there's a timeline that goes from Egypt to Prague to London, and eventually it finally ends up in France. And so what we're doing is we've been going to each of those places and telling the story as it occurred, where it occurred.
Wow.
And I'm working with a filmmaker. His name's Alec Hawkins. He's an award-winning filmmaker from Columbus, Mississippi. And he's my absolute best friend in the world.
Wow.
But so we've been working on that. And once we finish that, which will probably be this winter, then I'll get to pull the books back out that each one of them are at different levels of being done. But the one that's closest to being finished is a book on Tarot de Marseille.
Wow.
When the documentary is done, you definitely have to let us know and come back and talk
Absolutely.
about it and let us know and advertise about it. And
I'd love to, yeah.
oh, great.
Yeah.
Because you've got us hooked. Hey Lisa,
Now I have to get the other books. All right, so then hearing that, so then the Angels in Vermilion goes into Alchemically Stoned.
Alchemically Stoned was the first book, and it looks at the role of acacia in Freemasonry. But then at the end of that book, I wasn't able to answer how it got there. How did it feed? How did Masonry acquire this psychedelic tradition? Okay. So I went backwards and found the alchemical lineage, and that was Angels in Vermilion.
Okay.
And with that book, I was able to answer all the questions I really had about alchemy, Freemasonry, and their use of psychedelics in the early days, which of course they don't now. But there was a time that they did.
Mm-hmm. You do realize that you've given Gina and I the retail therapy bug right now. We have to go and do some retail. We need new books.
Well,
the books.
I know exactly how you feel. So
I need the books. Yeah, I obsess over books. I don't know if you. I have books here. I have books here. I have books downstairs, and I have more bookshelves all over the place. I mean,
yeah, I don't want to show you the rest of my room here, but
Do I see a hi-hat?
floor
That
is
cymbal
covered.
set?
Oh yeah, that's my I've got a
I see a guitar in your bag. What is
Tama,
it?
that's a Tama Exotica. I own a small music production company.
Oh, gee.
based out of-
In your spare time, you mean?
yeah, in my spare time. Yeah. It's been on hold since I've really been focusing on writing, but music is always a big part of my life. That was my first love. You play?
No, I am not. I am a tool belt diva. I build things.
No.
You know, when
Cool.
you look and you can read things in nature. I
Mhm.
look at a home, or I look at a pile of lumber, and I see what it can be. I can see a house blown apart in my mind. I can see a piece of furniture blown apart in my mind.
Wow,
Build anything or take anything apart. I'm an
amazing.
artist, designer, teacher. Like, I love doing this. I like putting different things for people to think,
Make people
Yeah.
think. Yeah.
and use their mind a little bit more.
I
broaden them out.
love the visual arts. I've always struggled with it. I like the idea of, say, being a painter, but I've never succeeded with anything like that. But music,
But the thing is, it's most people think of art as like straight lines and things. I'm whoops, that way.
Yeah.
That's mine.
oh, I see. Beautiful. Yeah.
I do. It's called pour painting, and I think that's the easiest way to put it. You just, for me, and that's where my music comes in. I will plug into some kind of music, and then I will paint. I will mix the colors. I will do everything. It just sort of, and it's abstract. It is what it is. And I'm also a Reiki master, so all my paintings are infused with Reiki, with healing. So
very
it's like
cool.
it's you just have to find the different art that you're connected to. But
Right.
your words are your art.
Yeah,
Because you
my
paint
thing with
one hell of a
painting-
picture of everything else that you've
what
done.
intimidates me with painting is the cost of getting started. It seems like
No,
so
no,
much has
no.
to be acquired.
nope.
Oh no.
You get these.
When I started physically painting, I got all my stuff from the dollar store.
You get
Really?
these little acrylic tubes.
Yep, like
and
that.
they're
They're like
you get
about that
these
big. It costs like
50 cents, $1,
79 cents or whatever it is at the dollar store.
Yeah.
And
So
you
if
could just start with that.
But when
Well,
I
next time we
was
talk, I
young,
might have a painting to
I
show.
did.
Hot diggity dog.
I used to do pen and ink a lot. Pen and ink, watercolor. That was like my go-to, and I did so many intricate things.
Yeah.
When I was younger. Now I can't do it because my hand has arthritis and problems and all that kind of
I
stuff.
loved to
And my
draw as a kid, but I never went past
art
that.
teacher followed me through every school. Right now, she was a very famous artist herself, Emily Busada, and she followed me. Like at 4th grade, we shaded schools, and then from 6 to 8, and then when I went to high school, she went to high school. So she was with me all the time. Like I have a picture on my wall over here. Actually, I did a charcoal drawing of a fox jumping over a log when I think I was like 12, and I found it when I
I've
was
always had a thing for foxes.
but the funny thing is I painted that. That's a mural on the wall at the high school, because that's what I used that. Because everyone was putting a little piece of a mural on the wall. Mine was the biggest part because I was the resident artist,
Yeah.
So I had the biggest part was the fox, and then everybody else did all the things around it. I went back to the school. My kids went to the same high school. I went back, when they were doing their things or whatever, and I would walk around, for because they were both into music. So when they had their recitals of what I call those things that the kids have at school, right? And I would go and I'd look, and it's like the picture actually shrunk, but the fox is still there on the wall. It's amazing, you know what I mean? And I have murals. I have murals in hospitals. I have a mural in a children's dermatology ward. I did like
Wow.
underground water scene. I have another one in a different doctor's office that's all like beach themes, stuff like that. But I've got murals out there from God when I was young teenager that are
That's
still.
awesome. Both of y'all are creative. That's very cool.
I think everybody has creativity. They just don't realize it that it's creative. Your words, like I said, paint a picture for us to sink into.
Yeah.
This is going to be a book, and like I said, I need to get the other books as well on this. And
Yep.
for me, it brings you into. It gives us a certain view on who you are because of the painting that you create with your work.
Yeah, yeah.
You give us knowledge about your subjects, but it also gives us like a little smidgen view into who you are.
Right.
And I
right.
like that about the things that we learn with our shows.
Yeah. Yeah, I can get behind that.
Yeah, I mean, it's like it's having the bravery to do what you love. You know what I mean? It's follow your passion. Like I'm also like claircognizant. Like when I say I can see these things, my dad was a carpenter. I grew up with that. My jungle gym as a kid was, a
Work shit.
complex. And I'm like, I'm climbing up, the studs and this and that. And he's saying, that's a jack stud. That's a king stud. That's a, you know what I mean? Like, okay, and he's like, I said, so this is going to be a triple window, and so like, that's how, I could see it too,
Yeah.
but I was all over it. I climbed all over it, and it's just, but I can envision things. I didn't know how to tile a floor. And it's like, I have a huge job to do. I went and I tiled this entire basement, my first tiling job. But I knew exactly what to do.
Mm-hmm.
It just came to me. I just knew exactly what to do. Came up absolutely perfect and beautiful. And the only help I got was grouting because that was a massive undertaking. But grout. But it's just like, don't have the fear to deter you from doing what you love. If you want to write about something, write about it. If you want to learn about something, learn about it. If you're not sure, research.
I agree. Yeah.
I mean, you've got to go for your passions. That's what life is all about. If anything you can learn from these people is, put yourself out there and do, if you're a hunter, you're going to hunt. Right? If you're a chunky player, you're going to play.
You're gonna chunky.
You're going to chunky. So I mean, you just got to do what you got to do, basically.
I agree. Yeah, painting has just always been kind of intimidating. But I'm gonna give it a go. Next time we talk, I'm gonna have a piece to show you.
Yeah, because the dollar store has everything. That's where I started with was like you said.
Over here.
I don't want to make I didn't want to go through all that big thing. So you go to the dollar store, you get like they've got not thousands, but they got dozens of colors that you can work with. They've got frames and everything else. Oh, like I said, that one came from the dollar store. The size of that frame came from the dollar store.
Great, yeah.
And it's
that's all my paint brushes over there. I got paints all over the place, but I got.
I see the brushes. Yeah.
So, that's all. My whole section over there is the art because I do paranormal equipment. I make boxes and coffin boxes, and I do customize them. So
my wife has been getting into watercolors, and she's doing great with.
Nice.
Oh, watercolor is fun. Does she play with salt with the watercolor?
I'll have to ask her that.
If you have some rock salt, tell her to put some water down. Right, just dip your paint tip into the color and let it go into the water. And as it starts spreading, drop some salt in there. It's going to go, and it makes the most insane marks. And then you'll know what to do with it. You can make flowers, stars, fireflies, all that kind of stuff.
All right, I'll tell her. I bet she does it tonight.
Oh, it's super cool. That's one thing I haven't done, and that's always been a passion of mine, is to teach children art.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That's the best thing to teach them. Some kind of art, yeah.
Yep.
And then let them go.
Just loading your brush. It's just you can do things. You can do it. I can do a mural in a day. I really can. And it's just blocking out, laying out, knowing the brushes. and loading your colors, multiple colors on your brush at once, and you're cutting out a million steps, and especially if you use acrylics, you got to kind of be that way because it dries fast. If you use an oil, you get time, so that's the only difference, between the fine arts and the whatever, is your once you get into fine arts and you want to use oils, then that's where your expense comes in. Especially your phthalo, some of the colors that you really need are very expensive.
Yeah.
And you use a lot of them. But the work time, the technique that you can get, the build up, the texture, all of that you can get with that is amazing. Acrylic is more flat. You know what I mean? You really can't do all that kind of stuff, but you can still get a great painting. And it's great to learn with.
Yeah, I do love the dimensions of oil paints.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Well, if you're going to dive in,
Yeah.
there's some great tutorials out there. There's
Yeah, there are. Yeah.
Online,
That's what she's with the watercolors. She's dove into tutorials and books, and pieces start coming
up there, right above all my brushes, all up there. That's all art books. All art books I'm going to be giving to my kids. All down below is more art books. It's endless.
Yeah.
They have books, but now everything's video. You don't have to read books anymore.
Don't say that.
It's good for those people who can't get into the reading of it, but they still want to learn it. So yeah.
You can see it. You can see it happen and unfold.
Yeah.
But no, you want to read this book. I
Oh,
finished reading this book, and I do want to talk to you when I finish reading this book, because now I have a much better perspective. Talking to you, I feel like I know you more. I can understand how you talk, how you communicate, that I can relate to this better. You know what I mean?
Good. Yeah.
Yeah.
I look forward to hearing your reflections on once you finish it, because there is a wholeness to it. Once you finish, you'll see what I mean. But I tried to convey a very particular picture with that book.
Well, yeah, I know where you're going, and I think I'm pretty sure I know where you're going to end. But the journey took me into a million different directions.
Yeah.
So I had to stop. I had to look this up.
That's good though. Imagine if it took you nowhere.
I know. So I thank you for that, because I love learning. I'm always saying, never stop learning.
And one more wrinkle
when you stop, I don't get gray hair.
But thank you. So what do you want to say to people?
Yeah, because we're at 2 hours, guys.
I know we are.
Really?
Flew by.
Yeah. See, it goes like this, right?
It really did. Yeah.
Why should people read this?
Well, I think for the first reason to read that book is it kind of opens your eyes to this, especially if you're in North America. It opens your eyes to the sanctity of the place you're standing, what's around you all the time. I like to say that there are two pantheons of gods that we owe something to, no matter what our religion is or what we're doing. And that's the gods in our blood and the gods in the dirt under the soil we're standing on. And there's something to the history of a land. There is a spirit to a place. And that spirit didn't go anywhere. It might speak a different language. There's a learning curve involved with learning to hear it and to communicate with it, but it's still present. And what the goal of that book really is, in the final analysis, is to put people back in touch with this place as a sacred space. Like you said earlier about Egypt. I mean, Egypt is amazing, but
I was always fascinated.
It's amazing. We went there for the documentary. It was life-changing, but I'm glad I didn't go running there before I had
explored at home,
visited those mounds. And number one, I could see the similarity a lot quicker and a lot easier. But people will do that. We'll run off to Egypt
things,
before they will go and visit mounds in their own state or a state over. And these are our Stonehenge. These are our Great Pyramid. These are these sites. If you're in North America, these are the sacred spaces.
Yep.
So that's the main reason. That's the one takeaway of why I read the book, and what I hope you get from it is that this place is still sacred, and we can tune into it, and we can pass it on.
Yeah.
Amen, because we need it.
That one. Yep.
Absolutely need that. And we don't have to go far. You know what I mean? If we live here in the States, you don't have to go far.
You don't have to go to Egypt to see something spiritual and humongously important.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. You don't have to spend a fortune. You don't have to go far, but you can feel everything.
Yeah.
You get it.
Yeah. It's amazing. All right, hang with us. I'm going to say goodbye to everybody, and we will see you next week. And we're going to have numerologist Michelle Arbeau next week. So we are going to be asking people for their birth dates. I think. Do
I have to admit I'm 63?
Yep. And I'm right there. Little step behind you. All right, but buonanotte, everybody. Thank you so much, P.D.Newman. You are amazing.
Check out his books. Amazon. Awesome.
Yeah, the book is amazing.
Thank y'all for having me. Pleasure talking. Really enjoyed getting to know you too.
I definitely did. You're amazing. Okay, but hang with us for a minute. All right, bye, everybody. We love you. Thank you so much for joining us for another episode of The Fox Den with Gina B and Mama D. We are here every Thursday evening from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, bringing you a variety of guests or our own intuitive oracle card reading shows. We are streaming live on Facebook on my personal page and our YouTube channel, The Fox Den with Gina B and Mama D, on Mama D's YouTube channel, Angel Meadows, as well as our audio-only venues. We hope you enjoyed our show and our guest or your reading, and we would love it if you would go to our YouTube channel, The Fox Den with Gina B and Mama D, subscribe, share, and definitely hit that notification button to never miss a show. We'll see you all next week, and subscribers, watch for our pop-up shows as well.